I was so pumped. I mean, as a fan of Castlevania, the sky was the limit in my mind for what was going to happen, the potential for this game to be amazing. Then we finally got the news that it wasn't going to come out. What's up, guys? It's your buddy Tyler coming at you with a brand new video here on My Retro Life. And do you remember video games that you may have seen listed in magazines as coming soon, or maybe you even saw an ad for the game in a magazine and thought, man, I really want to get that game. I can't wait till it comes out. And then they just never did. We're talking about those games that were canceled. Sometimes these games would make it as far as trade shows and actually have footage and demos released, but then the game just never saw the light of day. Well, in this video, I'm going to be going over my top 10 canceled video games that I wished had come out. Let's jump right into it. But first, a word about this video's sponsor, Exter. When I was a kid, my dad spent a lot of money on video games. In the years before online shopping and digital currency, all the games he bought for me were either cash or card, and he carried it all around with him in a beat-up, old and faded wallet. If only we had Exter back in those days. Exter is known for inventing the first trackable wallet, and now they're on a mission to upgrade the rest of your carry essentials. Exter wallets are half the size of conventional wallets, but they carry over 12 cards and cash. A built-in RFID blocker protects you from data theft and wireless skimming. Solar-powered tracking lets you track your wallet's location from your phone. You can access all your cards at the click of a button with the signature trigger mechanism. I've partnered with Exter to give you an exclusive discount, so enjoy up to 25% off using my code or link. Just go to shop.exter.com/myretrolife and use code RETRO. Coming in at number 10, it's the California Raisins, the Grape Escape on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Now, this was a game that I saw listed in Nintendo Power as a kid, and I wanted to see this game come out because it was made by Capcom. It was developed by Capcom, and they just had an incredible pedigree when it came to licensed video games. I just thought that the California Raisins would actually make a good game. I thought it would be a fun platformer, and I thought, of course, Capcom would do a fantastic job like they always did. Well, we saw this in magazines, and it just never materialized. And it wasn't until years and years later, a ROM leaked online, and now we are able to see what we were going to get. This ROM is fully playable. The game was basically finished, and it's not the best. The California Raisins, they were fun advertisements. They were fun food mascots, and they were this phenomenon in the 80s and early 90s. Like, there was merchandise everywhere. I know my cousins, Manny and Mikey, they had a California Raisin plush that was always sitting on top of their couch in the living room.
Along with us is our co-host, Mr. Grapevine. He will be watching and conducting us through our video game experiences.
By the time they were ready to publish this game, the California Raisins were just not a popular thing anymore, and so it was canceled. But I always wanted to check it out. Coming in at number 9 is Propeller Arena Battle on the Sega Dreamcast. Now, this was one I remember seeing advertised along with Alien Front Online, which Alien Front Online was a Sega Dreamcast game that I got into big time in the summer of 2001. In fact, Dad actually captured some footage of me playing online with my Sega Dreamcast. We're going to have to do a deeper dive into that video sometime. But Propeller Arena Battle was a game that was being advertised alongside Alien Front Online. I would see it in the instruction manual, and in the magazines, this game went as far as being reviewed. It was so close to coming out. And the reason this game never came out is quite simply because of September 11th. The 9/11 attacks happened on the World Trade Center, and suddenly Sega did not feel as though it were in good taste to release a game where you could fly airplanes into skyscrapers. It makes complete sense, and I understood it back then, but I couldn't help but be very disappointed we didn't get this game. There is a full playable released ROM out there. The game did eventually see a leak online, so you can go check it out if you want to. The full finished game is out there, and as it is, it's a game that I look so forward to playing this online with other people, because this was another multiplayer Sega Dreamcast online game that was going to be a lot of fun, or at least it looked like it was. Coming in at number 8, it's Tiny Toon Adventures on the Atari Jaguar. If you can believe it or not, I can remember seeing this game in magazines, and there was this screenshot that was always getting circulated of the Tiny Toons characters inside a rocket ship. And I remember the way that still was rendered, the way it looked. My imagination just ran wild with the possibilities of what this game was going to look like on the 64-bit Atari Jaguar. This game was never finished, but a ROM of what was completed has been released. It's available online. You can find it. If you want to emulate it, you can. Who knows if this game had been polished and finished, maybe had a good soundtrack. I don't know. This could have been a good platformer for the Atari Jaguar. Now, this was not being developed by Konami like the old Tiny Toon games on the NES, the Super Nintendo, and the Sega Genesis. No, this was being developed in-house by Atari. I was a huge fan of the show and the games that came before it, and so I was really looking forward to it. It looked like it had great potential from the screenshots, but man, this one just never came out. Coming in at number 7, it's X-Men Mind Games on the Sega 32X. Man, I was so excited for a Sega 32X X-Men game. I mean, X is right in the 32 X-Men. They could have done a great marketing thing with all of that, but no, this game never came out. It never saw the light of day. What has been released is some awesome box art, and I remember seeing this box art, I believe, as a kid and getting really hyped for it. It was going to be a 3D 32X game that really showed off what the 32X could do. At least that's what we hoped for in it. In the demo, you're playing as Bishop. In the game, you would have been able to play as Wolverine, Rogue, or Iceman also, but here we have Bishop. Really, the game looks like a 3D beat-em-up of sorts, and the music, great soundtrack. It looks like the music was completely finished. In fact, you can find what is available of it online, and I think it's nearly 100% complete on the soundtrack, but the game was never finished. The Sega 32X was doomed from the start, and a lot of games got canceled, but this was one of the ones I was looking forward to the most. Coming in at number 6, it's Eternal Champions, the final chapter. This was going to be released on the Sega Saturn. It would have been the third and final game in a trilogy of Eternal Champions games. And I really like the Eternal Champions games. There was one released on the Genesis and one released on the Sega CD, a sequel. And they were both very good. I liked them a lot. I played them a lot back in the day. And it felt natural that they were going to release a third game, especially when we looked at the back of the Sega Saturn box when we first picked it up back at launch in 1995. Dad and I actually saw that there was going to be this game, this third game in the series, the final chapter, and I would let my imagination run wild about what the third Eternal Champions game was going to look and play like, especially on next-gen hardware, because this was a time and an era in which we were jumping full speed ahead into 3D polygon fighting games like Virtua Fighter and Tekken. And so imagining Eternal Champions as a 3D fighter was amazing to me. Not a whole lot has surfaced about this game from what I've read. There really wasn't much work done on it. Really nothing past the conceptual stage. They thought that Eternal Champions would cannibalize the sales of Virtua Fighter, and so they just killed it. Coming in at number 5, it's Castlevania Symphony of the Night on the Tiger Gamecom. Now, you guys must be thinking,
Tyler, you're out of your mind. The Tiger Gamecom was horrible. Why would you have wanted any unreleased games released on this thing?
I gotta tell you guys, there was a period back in like 2001 when I was really hardcore collecting for the Tiger Gamecom. I would see in the back of this brochure that came with some of the later era games an advertisement for Castlevania Symphony of the Night. And this just blew my mind back then. I mean, the Tiger Gamecom was known for releasing these licensed games that were from popular video game franchises. I mean, you had Duke Nukem on there, you had a Sonic Jam game, and Castlevania Symphony of the Night was going to come out, but it never did. I remember seeing it in this brochure, this catalog that came with some of the games, and looking at the screenshots and just wondering, oh my gosh, this will be so amazing. I think if I remember correctly, I even tried calling the 1-800 number for Tiger and asking them if they ever intended on actually releasing this game. And somebody on the other line actually told me, no, we're discontinuing the product. There's no way this is coming out. And I knew then and there that this was not going to come out, and I was very disappointed. But as a huge fan of the game and the Castlevania series, I just thought it would be so cool to have it on the Tiger Gamecom. It is not a good console, but for some reason, I always enjoyed collecting for it. Coming in at number 4, it's Bonk role-playing game. There was a Bonk role-playing game that was being developed for the TurboGrafx 16, and I remember seeing this first in, I don't know if it was an issue of EGM or GamePro, but I saw it in the video game magazines back then. And at the time, I was a huge fan of the Bonk games. I had Bonk's Adventure, Bonk's Revenge, and Bonk 3 on the TurboGrafx CD. I loved this franchise and this character. For me, he was like the Sonic or the Mario of the TurboGrafx, right up there with those other incredible games. And so a Bonk role-playing game really seemed like a great idea to me. It seemed like such an interesting idea because this was before Super Mario RPG came out. So the idea of taking a well-known mascot character like this and making a role-playing game out of it, that was really intriguing to me. And so I eagerly awaited this game. I kept checking the magazines for updates, but we never got updates. In fact, that was the only thing I ever saw for years and years and years until the internet came around and I was able to find out more information. This game did not make it very far into development and it never saw the light of day. I was really looking forward to this, but somebody over at NEC, they must have just said, look, Bonk does not need to be a role-playing game. We're killing it. Coming in at number 3, it's Mega Man Universe. Now, this was going to be on multiple platforms. It was announced in 2011 by Capcom, and they even released 2 trailers. One that was kind of like this really high-budget commercial featuring claymation that was a huge homage to other Capcom properties, having Mega Man and even Ryu and Arthur from Ghosts and Goblins show up in this commercial. It was this great teaser trailer for Mega Man Universe, and then they released a gameplay trailer that basically, guys, this was going to be Super Mario Maker, but Mega Man. And that in itself is ingenious. I would have loved to have been able to go through and make my own Mega Man levels and bosses and have all this customization. It would have been so much fun. The fan in me was going nuts when I saw the advertisements for this and the announcements. It was crazy that this game got canceled. I remember when I heard the news that the game was going to be canceled, I thought, you have got to be out of your mind. You release games like Mega Man Soccer, but you don't release Mega Man Universe. It felt like such a genius idea. It felt like something that could have sold really well. And to this day, I have no idea why this never came out. I mean, building your own Mega Man levels, this would have been such a love letter for the fans, for fans to be able to go in and make and customize their own Mega Man games. Can you imagine that, people? Can you imagine that? Oh, I can only imagine, and that's really all we can do at this point. because for some reason, Capcom canceled the game. Coming in at number 2, it's Castlevania Resurrection on the Sega Dreamcast. When this game first was announced and the screenshots started showing up in video game magazines and online, I was so pumped. I mean, as a fan of Castlevania, the sky was the limit in my mind for what was going to happen. The potential for this game to be amazing. You'd see it in the magazines, and then all of a sudden, talk of it stopped. And I really started to wonder. Dad and I would often talk about it. Like, I wonder if that Castlevania game is ever going to come out. And then we finally got the news that it wasn't going to come out. Now, there's a leaked trade show demo. This was shown at E3 and other trade shows, and people could play this demo. And I just am so thankful that today we could actually look and play this game, at least what was finished of this game. We can see what they were going for. And honestly, guys, I really think they were onto something with this. Sure, the controls are stiff. There needs to be a lot of refinement here. But what we're seeing here, along with the really interesting soundtrack that was made for this, I actually really like it. I see a lot of potential in this game. And it's just a shame that it never came out. I mean, I think if they put some extra polish and really made the controls tight and everything kind of flowed with a great narrative, I think we could have had a great Castlevania game. And coming in at number 1, it's Sonic X-treme on the Sega Saturn. Man, this was the killer app, guys. This was the one that we wanted to come out so badly. We would see this thing advertised in magazines, and even some footage of it was shown on various video formats and in upcoming, coming soon type tapes that we would receive in the mail from Sega. This was a game that was shown off as it's coming. We're going to tease you with this footage. We're going to show you little bits and pieces here. We're going to talk about it in the magazines. And as Sonic fans, we just wanted that killer app Sonic game to come out on the Sega Saturn. And Sega was kind of ahead of their time with what they were developing on Sonic X-treme. Now, granted, the name Extreme would have been horrible. Like, that's just so terrible. 90s extreme, man, extreme. It's the 90s, it's got to be extreme, so it's Sonic X-treme. But had this game actually come out, I think we would have been very excited, very happy with what we got. You know, sure, it wasn't being developed by Sonic Team, but anything at this point would have been accepted in the world of 3D Sonic games on the Sega Saturn. But we never got that true 3D Sonic game. This was the one that was being hyped up like crazy. One of the most hyped games of my entire life. I wanted it so bad. I can't believe it never saw the light of day. But we have a lot of footage and things to base this off of and see for ourselves what might have been. That is why it is number 1 on this list. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. There were a lot of canceled video games that I remember growing up being so excited for, and they just, for whatever reason, they got on the chopping block, and the companies, the developers that were making these games just said, no, we can't do it. Some of them on this list, I totally understand. I get why they never came out. Others, I can't believe they didn't come out. It's like, finish them. They looked great. They would have been awesome, but it just never happened. But you know what? We got other great games in their place. And if anything, we have these fabled, legendary, unreleased games that we can look back on and just wonder. We can always say, what if these games had come out? Would they have changed the gaming landscape or changed gaming as we know it? I don't know. It's all up for speculation. But I sure did have a lot of fun looking back at them and giving you my top 10. I really hope that you enjoyed this video. If this is your first time to the channel, please do consider subscribing. I love talking about my game crazy family and all of the amazing adventures we had with video games, so many of which were caught on tape. And hey, if there was a game that I missed on this list that really, this is my list, it's my personal list, I want to know what maybe you would have put on your list. Let me know in the comments below. Thanks a lot, guys. I'll catch you next time.